critical thinking has been a challenge for much longer than GPT's been around. That's 3.5's been around. And now you have this tool that everybody should be leaning into. But if you lean into it too much, it actually can have negative impacts on your ability to think critically. And so without the right guidance, it could be a situation where you actually dumb down your employee base, where they rely too much on this technology.
Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. Question: is it a coffee day or is it a Monster Energy drink day? Answer: both. The guest today is an absolute badass. He's back for the second time. That's how you know things are going to get real right about now. He's absolutely amazing. If you're interested in his backstory, episode 136, back in the day, March 2020, which we can all probably remember where we were at right around that month. Back then, I chatted with this guest for the first time, and he absolutely shook my marketing mind, and he's back. Well, who is he, Casey? Enough pontificating about your feelings. Tell us about this guy. Well, you know what? Marketing and sales leader, thought leader, AI expert in the real sense of the word, revenue architect, advisor, you name it, podcaster, all the things. 25 plus years helping B2B companies sort through the chaos. He's been the top 5 emerging training leaders award, the top most powerful sales professionals, the team player award, you name it. This guy has awards. People are seeing what is going on. Previously, the creator of the award-winning podcast, the B2B Revenue Executive Experience. And now his team just launched the new Wired for Wonder podcast. Co-founder and Minister of Mavericks at DeepHumanX. Chad Sanderson, welcome back to the show, sir.
Hey, it's great to be here. I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to come back. Looking forward to the conversation.
All right, man. Well, last time I learned it up, and so I'm going to pass you this thing. It's your old friend. It's heavy, but I know you're super strong. Here you go. Okay. Go ahead. Grab Thor's hammer. You got it? Okay. Chad, take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
So the one right now that's top of mind for me is Shopify's belief that by enabling their employees to learn AI on their own, they're going to be able to be successful as a business and an organization. The fact of the matter is that that type of wild, wild west mentality may have made sense when everybody shared the same understanding of how the technology works, SaaS applications or things that we've been using for years. But even as the CEO admits in a recent memo, this technology is not like anything else we've seen before. So while I applaud the willingness to take the risks and give the people the freedom, the reality is in order to be successful, they're going to have to invest in the enablement of those individuals to learn and interact with this technology in new ways to drive unprecedented returns in marketing, the way they go to market, the way they service their customers. Yes, they'll get some aha moments and some bright lights where people come up with something or put something together, but they'll have pockets of that. Whereas if they took a more proactive enablement approach of enabling people to understand the tech, interact with it, and effectively activate their augmentation with it, they'd be able to achieve, I believe, even greater results than what they're hoping to achieve now.
Man, off to the races. Okay, let's break it down. Right before we hit record, you're like, dude, did you hear about this memo? I hadn't. So already you're teaching me things. So what did the CEO, it's Shopify, right? What did he say in this memo?
Yeah, so it looks to be an internal memo that the Shopify CEO sent to the employee base.
Yeah.
The tone of it is great. I mean, it is very well constructed. And overall, I would applaud the realization and the communication and the transparency. And I want to give the CEO credit for that.
Okay, we can't thrash him too much just yet.
Well, I mean, look, and the fact of the matter is we're firm believers over here at DeepHumanX that not everybody has the answers. And those that at least try something are the ones that are going to be ahead at the end of the day. And Shopify is obviously trying something. And the CEO admits in the memo that he's interacted with Gen AI, but even he feels like he's just scratching the surface, right?
Mm.
And so there is a lot of fear in the market and a lot of misunderstanding, misconceptions, people buying into the hype cycle and huffing the exhaust of whatever the clickbait is of the day. But the fact of the matter is that when you look at that memo, it's basically setting a new tone that the new path forward is AI augmentation, right? That in order to hire new employees, you have to be able to demonstrate that it's not something that couldn't be done with AI or agentic AI. In advance, okay, I can understand that. I like it. I don't know what the parameters are for proving that or things like that, but I like that tenet. And there are other things in there, that they want to, start to incorporate, AI into their development, which makes sense. But it becomes a fundamental, and this is a quote, fundamental expectation of everyone at Shopify. Love it, right? Let's set the tone. Let's make it part of the DNA because this isn't going away, right? This genie's not going back in the bottle.
Right.
And while there are an increasing number of people who have interacted with it and use it, there's still a much larger percentage of the population that still look at a ChatGPT window or a Grok window and think of it much like a search engine, and that's already off to the races in the wrong way. But the thing in there was the number 4 point that kind of hit me, which quote is learning is self-directed, but share what you learn. And so, like I mentioned earlier, that kind of
Mm.
creates this, hey, go forth, play with it, experiment. That sentiment is awesome. But the reality is that to the CEO's own point in the memo, it says this technology is not like anything we've seen before. So while you want to create that sense of freedom for innovation, I still think you need to create a unified way of enabling that workforce. It could rub some people the wrong way and say, "Oh, great. You're throwing me this new tool. You expect me to go play with it and do all of the work, and then you want me to share back what I learned to the benefit of the company, but there's no really investment in making sure I'm successful and don't go down a different track, right?" And this is one of the things that we see a lot because AI, specifically generative AI, is being driven by individuals rather than organizations. There is a difficulty or hesitancy for companies to take a little bit more of a systemic approach to enabling people in a way that drives a unification that augments them all effectively so they can innovate as part of the DNA and do it
Yeah.
effectively. And this is just one of the things that I saw when I read the memo. And funny enough, it got forwarded to me by 4 people in the span of, I want to say, 2.5 hours, including a family member who works for a tech company in Tennessee. And so it's making the rounds, and people are like, whoa, wait a minute, this may be a wake up call. But much like anything else, you got to spend a little bit of time really thinking about what's in it and what it really means, what the ramifications could mean.
Yeah, man, it's such an interesting point you bring up. It's a great conversation. I kind of wonder what was his name? What's his name?
Oh, hold on a sec.
As you're looking it up, had he talked to me, all he had to do was shoot me a DM on X, right? I would have told him this doesn't. Okay, so and I understand now why it's bullet number 4.
I believe it's pronounced Tobias Lutke.
Got it. Tobias,
Tobias, yeah.
bro. Okay.
And look, Shopify is an amazing company.
Hey, amazing company. I understand why it's bullet 4, which is why we're sort of fixating on it is around the training and the aspect. I've tried this, right?
Yeah.
At even a small company, you say, "Hey, just experiment." Well, guess what? Some people will, some people won't, and maybe we focus on the sharing, but I don't know. It just feels like it's a bullet 4, almost like it's a token bullet. That's not exactly, I bet, how you really roll it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think about it like this. You've got let's use an analogy similar to, I mean, most people would be familiar with like Gerber multi-tool, right?
I got one. Yeah, I love it.
Well, I think I've got 3 of them floating around in
Love those
various
guys.
configurations. And people that have them, even myself who does do, work on the motorcycle or around the house, there's probably only 2 of the 12 tools in there that I use regularly, right?
Right.
Or quite frankly, I may not even be completely aware of everything that it can do. And so, yes, I'm engaged with it, but am I optimally using it to drive the type of impacts for the projects that I'm working on? The answer there is simply no.
Right.
Part of that is I don't have that mindset. Nobody's ever given me an understanding of, hey, this tool does that. You could use this like this. I'm a very limited kind of mechanically inclined individual. The same thing kind of holds true when you start to look at generative AI. And I feel bad for individuals because it can be amazingly overwhelming. You have this section of the market where you have existing technologies, SaaS products, and everybody and their mother is saying, "Oh, we have AI. We have some type of AI. We put AI in," and they all work to varying degrees, right? Some are better than others. You don't really know what's under the covers. You don't know what kind of model it's using. You don't know what safeguards are in place. But then you have this family of kind of frontier models. Everybody should be familiar with ChatGPT at this point. You got Gemini, Grok, Claude, Copilot, Llama, DeepSeek. Those are just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And each of them to some extent will kind of, it's just like they're inching ahead of each other. Eventually they're all going to, parity out in terms of like feature functionality. But the underlying way that the tech works and what you really need to understand, not only about the technology, but about how you interact with it, creates a situation that we haven't seen in the workplace from an individual team member standpoint, a manager standpoint, a leadership standpoint. And I think it creates opportunities specifically for SMB and mid-market companies that can be a little bit more organizationally agile to approach this in a way that empowers them to outstrip their competition by multiple factors if they're approaching it the right way.
Right.
Now, I could also argue that to Shopify's credit, they're at least heading in a direction. They're at least doing something. I know many companies who still haven't even figured out what their AI policy is, and they're still scared of it. So there's no organizational direction, but the underlying employees are using it all over the place. That creates risks. It creates legal exposure potentially for the IP, ethical considerations and concerns. So it's not as simple as like, hey, we just added a new module to Salesforce, have fun, because everybody kind of gets how the Salesforce interface works. This is something completely different. And I think those organizations need to at least take a step in the direction. So applaud Shopify for that. I think the right way to go, though, is to make sure you're taking some time to enable the employees to understand how this is different, to understand how their thinking and their approach with it will drastically impact their outputs.
Yeah, right. So, point 1 through 3, hey, awesome. We're throwing the gauntlet down. Don't hire anyone unless you can prove that you couldn't have done it in AI. To your point, there's some murkiness there, but the intention's there. So how do we do the rollout right? How do we do that? Like, if you rewrote bullet 4 or you were to advise Shopify, how would that change?
Yeah, so that's a great question, right? And so when you look at it, there's a couple of ways you can go. Shopify took the, hey, we're gonna let you all go. We're gonna open the gates and let the masses run. That's at least something. Some companies are still trying to say, hey, don't use that, which is cute because everybody's using it. Whether it's BYOAI at this point, right? Bring your own AI to the table.
Right.
But one of the things that I would do is I might have taken a little bit more of an approach that demonstrated the understanding and the leadership of, hey, we as leaders understand this technology is different. It is infinitely powerful and it can be harnessed for great things, but we recognize that there is a gap between the baseline understanding necessary to use it effectively and kind of where our employees are, right? So when a leader says, hey, it's self-directed, you're not meeting each of the employees where they are because that leaves room for a lot of interpretation. You may have a percentage of your employee base that are just naturally curious and they're like, hell yeah, let's do this. Let's get in here and let's look at it. I can do this. I can do that. Maybe I could try this. They'll experiment. You have others that may not be, focused or lean that way. They're like, I don't even know where to start. So then it's, baby steps. So now what you do is you create even greater disparity in potential performance across your employee base. And when in the same memo, you're basically saying we expect a significant increase in productivity across the employees, you're setting a bar without providing the enablement that could create cultural friction and could potentially slow the organization down. I don't know if that will be true, but from other change initiatives I've been involved with over the last 20 years, if you're not taking a change management approach that understands not all employees are at the same place with everything or will react the same way, you're increasing the risk of failure.
Yeah, acknowledging that everyone's at different places. Some people just don't want to use it.
Right.
You mentioned bring your own platform. Everyone has different ones. One of the things is that Gemini, right? So that's Google's AI, and I had been choosing ChatGPT and X and other ones. I even started using one that like looked at several at the same time, and just was doing that. And then I got an email from Google saying, you know what, if you add $5 to all your Google business accounts, you can have Gemini. And I thought, yeah, nah, right. And then especially because I heard it made George Washington Asian, all sorts of weird rumors about Google's AI. So I was like, nah, I won't use it. But then something like a month later, I got an email saying, well, hey, guess what? You now have access to Gemini in all of your Google accounts. Don't worry, we've increased your your fee by $1.16 just so you can have that. Like, okay, so we all have to have this now.
Yeah. Well, and then so that creates an interesting challenge, right? If you think about it. So like if you're in the Google ecosystem, they're going to integrate Gemini, right? If you're in the Microsoft ecosystem, they're using Copilot. Then you have these things that are outside of, and Apple has yet to figure out what they're doing.
Lagging behind Apple.
Yeah, well, and so it's interesting, right? For a company that has so historically been innovative and at the forefront, they're taking a much more measured approach, which to me actually is interesting because I feel like, now I don't know this to be true, but the emotional reaction I have is that they are being more careful because there are some pretty significant ethical considerations that need to be, thought through before we just open the gates in many cases. But when you look at those kind of ecosystems and their integration of the AI, look, Gemini is good at certain things and horrible at others.
What's it good at?
For me, it's good at the integration and leveraging all of the data that it's tied into.
Because your email in there, your
Yeah.
account, everything.
But if I want to innovate or I want to create a prompt and an engagement that's going to make the model test me or push back or be a really kind of debate partner, right? From a brainstorming, I'm going to use ChatGPT because that's easier for me to create prompts and I get better response from it. If I'm going to write, if I'm doing something that's written or will eventually be converted into a video script or something like that, I'm going to use Claude.
Oh, nice.
If I'm doing research of any kind that I need to trust the sources I get, I'm going to Perplexity and I'm using the Perplexity deep research. Now, Google has a deep research. They're all, like I said, they're all going to eventually get to different levels of parity. But then there's the question of how are they trained? What data were they trained on? How are they structured? So you'll have this disparity to some extent. At the end of the day, though, that then even further creates this learning hurdle that, okay, if I just said, hey, go use it, and these are the tools you have access to, Copilot, Cursor, Claude, and Proxy are the things that they're using, or he mentions in the memo. Okay, great. But what if I want to use one of these other ones? So I think there needs to be a little bit more direction, a little bit more level setting, a little bit more guided experimentation so that people can understand what works best for them. Because we anchor at DeepHumanX, we anchor on ChatGPT, but we work with all of them, right? Like, so when we look at our agentic bases and things like that, we're usually starting with ChatGPT. But that doesn't mean we're not using the others and experimenting. That's kind of the space we're in. That's part of our job. But for a day-to-day work thing, people have a hard enough time in a SaaS tech stack trying to remember where stuff goes.
Yeah.
Where do I put this data? Where do I put that? What do I have to enter where? And then you've all, especially if you think salespeople, did you update Salesforce? That's been the mantra of sales executives for 2+ decades now. Now you take that and you use a generative model approach, and there are multiple models that do different things in different ways, and they're constantly changing. You're creating a steeper learning curve without providing enablement for the employees to climb that curve as fast as possible in a way that's not only going to help them provide the results for the business, but that's also going to help them understand how it may help that employee really truly become purpose driven in their work, which then even further amplifies the results that are possible.
You know what? I think you really hit it there with that. Just needs more direction. Like instantly when you read that memo part to me, I thought, oh no, this is not going to work. This is not it. And I couldn't articulate it until you said that. Yeah. Like, hey, do you know anything? Can you tell me anything? I don't know if you remember, there's Schitt's Creek. There's this famous scene where this kid is trying to do some baking or something with his mom, and she's like, just fold the cheese in, and he's like, how do you do that? And she's like, well, he's like, can you teach me? So I can teach you a million things. I can't teach you this. Like, just teach me this one. So I just wonder, right. Even if they had said like, hey, start here, or, for anyone who's interested, we've got this, step 1 for you. If you're off there in step 97, cool. Here's a place to share what you've learned. I don't know, something like that.
Well, and if you think about the historical organizational structure, whether it be a mid-market company or one of the larger enterprises, right? They're all typically hierarchical, some form, shape, or fashion. They may have run some experiments running pods or train architecture, organizational structures, but historically, it's all based off of the Industrial Revolution, hierarchical thinking. And what we've seen up until before, let's say November 2022, when GPT 3.5 came out, was everybody talked about silos. Oh, we've got silos in the organization, and we're not driving cross-functional communication. And especially in the sales and marketing space, sales and marketing were always, most people would have said, we're not. They were kind of at loggerheads. They were not helping each other. And so inside of that structure, if you think about how fast in the past 3 years that Gen AI has taken off, the marketing people are probably the first ones. Marketing and developers were probably the first 2 areas in the org that started to play with it, because the content creation piece and automation, all that stuff makes sense for marketers to look at. So they may be a little bit further ahead than the salespeople who have, I may have a new research tool. Like I look at it as it's just a new way to do some research, and I do that faster. But what very few are looking at are the cognitive impacts, right? And so there's actually research that came out recently, and we're actually doing a research project to go deeper on this right now, called the delusion effect, which is basically, if you over rotate on the usage of AI, it actually negatively impacts your critical thinking. And I don't mean to sound, I'm Gen X, so I just kind of say it like I see it. Critical thinking's been a challenge for much longer than GPT's been around. The 3.5's been around. And now you have this tool that everybody should be leaning into. But if you lean into it too much, it actually can have negative impacts on your ability to think critically. And so without the right guidance, it could be a situation where you actually dumb down your employee base, where they rely too much on this technology. They don't keep the human in the loop the right way. And they're producing results, their productivity increases, but the quality and caliber of that suffers. And I think this is one of the things that, we don't think 2 or 3 steps beyond what the initial, hey, do this is, right? And I think because of the speed at which AI and Gen AI specifically is advancing, without that component, you're sacrificing long-term relevance for short-term, adoption. And I think that creates some potential speed bumps for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, that's what all the moms are worried about. All the teachers, you're gonna rot your brain out if you use that for decision making. And yeah, some guidance on how to leverage it as a resource, as a research assistant, but don't decide your fate on it.
Well, yeah, and think here, I'll give you a use case, right? So let's think about just, and this was one that I've heard multiple people talk about. It's not one I came up with, but I think it resonates and it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, you got a parent, kid comes home from high school or whatever and says, hey, I need help with, let's just say math. I'm not a math guy. So if somebody says, hey, help me with math, I'd be like, yeah, that's a mom thing. Oh, mom's not home. Okay. Well, the inclination would be like, well, ask Chat GPT.
100%.
Makes sense. However, if you don't tell it to not give you the answers, if you don't think to yourself, hey, guide me through this process, and you don't tell the GPT, help me understand this without giving me the answers so that I can internalize the learning, it's just going to give you the answers. And then I didn't do any thinking. I didn't cognitively engage. And the net result for my intelligence, my critical thinking is a net loss
Mhm.
versus the thought before you engage with the tech, hey, I need to think about this. I don't want it to give me the answers. What I really want is it to guide me and act like a tutor. Not everybody's gonna, and it seems so common sense, but
Yeah.
when you go type it in or you talk to it without including that, the model's not gonna do that and simply say, "Oh, well, this is the answer that you're looking for. There you go." And now a teacher doesn't know if that student has actually learned it. So now you're creating just even greater disparity, intellectual disparity in the classroom. Same thing holds true in business.
You know what? I literally just bounced into that exact situation recently. Math for my daughter, it's in that sort of algebra where we're comparing, the power rule that I haven't used in 35 years. What do you do when there's a power inside of parentheses and a power on the outside? What about a negative power? When the hell have I ever encountered a negative power? Never. Well, guess what? Only in math for middle school, and I don't remember. So I found it helpful to help me help her. But you're right. We did encounter a situation recently. She was a little stressed out, and it was like, okay, it gave us the path, but between step 5 and 6, it's like, wait, I don't even know. How did you do that? What? And she's like, well, the answer is just here. And I was like, no, no, hold on, because it's not going to help you because you're going to go do the test and you're not going to know because you're not going to have a friend here you're not going to have an AI friend, right? So I just literally asked it, "Look, I don't get it. Can you explain it? I'm feeling dumb right now. Like, explain it better, right?"
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah, sure." Somehow I've got mine programmed to be, like, super positive. So I was like, "Oh, sure, let's do this." And then it broke the steps down additionally. I'm like,
Yeah.
it took smaller steps, and then we understood it and saw what was happening. By the way, when you have negative power, you flip the whole thing upside down, but, like, who even cares? I don't know. But to your point, you very, very easily could have used that incorrectly, and then, yeah, set yourself up for a failure later on.
Yeah, and if you think about it, like from a, okay, I'm going to unleash my employees, I'm going to unleash my team, and let's say maybe we put in place something where you help them understand, basic prompt structure, some baselining there. Everybody might say, okay, at least everybody now has at least some way to consistently interact. But the problem is, like, one word change in a prompt can impact the results. Well, why did that word change? What was that employee going through at the time? Why do they default to that type of communication style? And so then one of the things I've seen is a company deploy kind of a prompt. It's a plugin for a browser. There's a couple of them out there that you type in something, it'll analyze it, and it'll create kind of an optimized prompt, and it up levels it, and that's great. The results are better. But if that's doing that consistently, then what you're getting is the intellectual level of that prompt revision, not your employees. And so now then you already put this artificial ceiling over what people are capable of getting out of their interactions or their use cases or things like that. So there's kind of a workflow where that human in the loop has to be consistently there. Well, to be in that loop effectively, they have to have a certain level of, creativity, cognitive flexibility, curiosity, these intellectual skill sets, these human specific skill sets that are not necessarily something that the education system or companies have focused on for the past couple of decades. And that creates disparity in the skill set that you're looking for when you hire. Sure, just like a salesperson should be able to get a job, that doesn't necessarily mean they're an effective, consistent sales professional. The same thing will be true with the AI. I know how to craft a prompt. I can show you an example. Somebody says, "Oh, that's great." Well, that doesn't mean they actually know how to optimally use the tool to get the types of results. So then you create a difficulty with, who do I hire? What's the optimal skill set? How do I test for that? And really, what am I looking for? Am I looking for just another cog to put in the wheel and make it spin faster? Or am I looking for somebody that's going to actually help us kind of go to the next level with the company? And it gets really complex really fast, all because we didn't take the time and invest minimal, levels of time and money up front to create a unified understanding. The outcome gets much more chaotic potentially.
100%. It's that context, and without it, it's just literally gonna give us what we ask for. I think that's the real challenge. I've definitely had conversations with people about in the future, a lot of as long as the context can be discovered in some other way, or maybe it'll ask us for context, that we'll have to get less and less skilled at prompts. But right now, it definitely seems like we're in the prompt generation where you get what you ask for, you know?
But you can, I mean, we've gone through some of the, the prompt workshops and certification, all that stuff. But
Yeah,
if you know how to use the tech, you can get the tech to help you write the optimal prompt
for sure.
92% of the time. There may be some, situations where you really need a deep understanding because you're tackling something particularly complex. But at the end of the day, there is this, do you want your organization to be creating the future based off the cliff notes, or do you want them to be creating the future based off of an understanding of the source, right? And the ability to tell the difference and to be able to know when one works better than the other. These are challenges that I think the outdated hierarchical industrial revolution thinking and the playbooks that most organizations are used to, or that even most consulting firms are used to deploying, becomes a net negative for these organizations. There is a opportunity right now for, and again, I think it falls more into SMB and mid market, for organizations to take an approach to becoming and increasing the agility of the organizations, the teams, and the individuals, in order to achieve goals and outcomes that they hadn't expected before.
When you mentioned the the prompt engineering and how you can actually get help with the prompt. I do wonder though if the same person who probably could do a good job of the prompt anyways would be the one that would know that it can help you write the prompt. And I wonder if there's even this like chasm in between where chasm there's this divide of the people who have played around, the people who haven't. Uh, and I wonder if it's even just better as an organization to focus on the people who have. I don't know.
Well, so, and I mean, then you get into, so now we get into some of these big philosophical questions, right? So at first, there are still people that are kind of coming through the adoption curve the same way, right? But at
Yeah.
first, like a year and a half ago, a big conversation was around displacement. And there were a lot of reports that talked about how many millions of people would be displaced, and everybody was worried, AI is coming for my job. In some cases, that may be true, right? It's just the harsh reality that some things that are extremely task oriented, transactional task oriented, will be able to be automated out of existence, but new roles will reappear. We're hoping. Right? And so, as we do that, as you look at that, there will be those individuals who lean into it, learn how to become change resilient, just accept that a constant state of movement is the new norm. There'll be some that, follow behind that and still can use the tech effectively. The ones that have to worry are really the ones that are like, I don't want anything to do with it. Because this is the equivalent of saying, hey, I don't want electricity. Like, we're talking about something that's going to have that large of an impact. And there are new reports coming out. And it depends, a lot of this is still unknown, but whether it's, Bill Gates saying that by 2030, AI will do the vast majority of human jobs, or the new reports that are coming out saying we could hit artificial general intelligence in the next 2 years. There is a uncertainty in the horizon that is much closer than the vast majority of people in the work world are realizing. And I think a lot of people will get caught off guard. And unfortunately, because there is a lot of hype, and this is where I think sometimes social media and all of that stuff is a detriment. If you don't lean into it, this isn't something where the hype alone is going to help you. It may be a pointer. It may be like, hey, here's my little, low fuel light just popped on. I need to pay attention to this. But this is something where you kind of really have to get through the noise and figure it out in a way that's going to be effective based on your context, from a personal usage to a usage as a leader or a manager to usage as an executive or an AI strategy for the company. And it's funny, I had somebody say to me, I think it was earlier this week even, hey, I thought, we would have thought that DeepHumanX did most of its work with non-tech companies because, the tech companies, they obviously are leaning into it. And what's interesting, if you look across our customer base, the largest percentage is tech companies, even some of which have AI in their name. because they figured out how to create certain things or enable certain AI, but they're internally, as the way the organization runs, they run like an outdated historical hierarchical company that is using a structural or organizational structural playbook that's outdated, which then
Yeah.
has impacts on the way the org operates. And the thing is, like, hey, I'm a tech company. We've been dealing with tech change, every year. This one's different. This one is built different. It is scaling differently. It is improving faster than anything we've ever seen. And if you're going to try and develop the tech and deploy the products, you then also need to be investing in making sure you're helping your employees internalize not only your tools, but others and their augmentation of AI so that you get the full effect. Or you'll see what we're starting to see, which is companies that 18, 24 months ago were getting millions of dollars of investment to come up with customized GPTs. That's so 2024. Like, it's not, the future is much more agenic at this point. And then the question becomes, if we hit artificial general intelligence within the next 2 years, is the investment in agenic where it should be, right? Because the speed at which this is changing necessitates a different type of thinking in order to be able to surf it and stay relevant. And that is at the crux, what we, kind of one of the core beliefs for DeepHumanX.
It's a great point. I hadn't heard that said, but I guess that it's so fast that, yeah, customizing your own GPT is just not. Why exactly is it not even a thing anymore?
Well, I mean, it's a thing, but companies would, there were companies that got moneyed and they came up with a customized GPT. Like, hey, I just created this customized GPT that could be a paralegal or
Right,
something.
your attorney or yeah.
But and that made sense in that small window. It made sense at that small part of time. But then the platforms developed so fast and improved so fast, community based. So you can go into ChatGPT, and I don't know how many, I'm sure most people are aware, although I could be wrong. You can go into ChatGPT and you can look at the community of customized GPTs that are out there. And in 8 out of 10 cases, 9 out of 10 cases, I can find one that's free and publicly available, that it has the credentials to be trusted enough for me to do what I want to do. So why would I pay for a company to a licensing fee, a recurring fee for a company to update a ChatGPT,
Yeah.
customized GPT?
Yeah. Yeah, marketing, I guess, and like the people that don't know.
Right. And
Yeah.
then without knowing, people are like, oh, this agent thing. And I'll tell you, the TikToks and the Instagram reels and all of that stuff, you would think that you could deploy it right now, today, in April of 25, that you could deploy an agenic organization. You can't yet. You might be able to eventually, right? And in the very near future, but the perception isn't the reality of understanding what an agent is and how it works. And so, okay, now an org switches and says, let's look at agenic. Well, you've got maybe a 12-month window on that, 18 tops, maybe, before the next thing happens. And you've got to rethink the business again. And there was, I believe it was Adam Grant. I could be wrong on that, but I think it was Adam Grant from Wharton who said the future isn't about intelligence, it's about agility. And so being able to get to a point where you're infusing a way of thinking into your organization that is change resilient, that increases agility, that hires for and enables the right skill set, you're constantly going to be fighting against the advancements that are happening.
Note to self: don't invite you back on the pod 4 or 5 years from now. We should probably stay in touch a little bit sooner. Thinking about trying not to boil the ocean. Someone listening right now, typically head of marketing, sales departments. What would you say is the one thing they need to do?
Start with a team-based workshop that is where everybody can be focused, right? It only needs to be, a couple hours to maybe a day. You spread it out virtually, whatever. But you need to get the team together, level set them in the way that they can think, but get them all hands-on. So you're starting to lay the groundwork for shared understanding and communication, help them understand who's better at what, where, when, and how, so that they all have a consistent kind of grounding, and then a consistent approach that the team can use to step into and adopt iterative thinking with the technology. So it isn't enough to just say, hey, I'm going to teach you how to use chat GPT, or I'm going to teach you how to use, Perplexity. They're already doing that. The vast majority of them are already playing with that at certain levels. We need to be able to create a space that is focused on that, preparing the cement, right, for the foundation for the future. And that's going to be getting everybody on the same page, getting them at least somewhat level set with skills and understanding of the tech and how it's different, how to effectively use this different tech and augment with it, and do it in a way that will give them real quick wins, right? So it needs to be something that's structured to tackle a current business challenge, but it's really an intro to AI, effective AI augmentation, and thinking, right? If start there and then baby step it, but baby step it fast, right?
Right. Right. So get everyone on the same page. I love the level set for the team. Do you end up having like one or two champions internally that just carry the flag for this, or do you really need everyone thinking about it?
Well, so you really need everyone thinking about it. And that's where I think another big opportunity is that this technology is so different and so powerful that you have an unprecedented opportunity if you focus on getting the people aligned with their purpose and the use of the tech. So that while, yeah, you'll still probably have one or two outliers that are huge champions and they're running faster than others, but other people will become purpose driven and internally motivated to engage, stay on top of, right? They get excited about it. Like the example I use with a couple clients is, I've been using machine learning and AI since over a decade. The generative stuff really didn't get good until ChatGPT 3.5 came out. I've been living in this world deep since before October or November of 22, but really since November of 22. My wife could care less about AI. Like she just does not even, it's not even, she's like, yeah, that's fine. That's cute.
That's nice.
Until I showed her that you could use ChatGPT to take a picture of the refrigerator and it would tell you what you had in the refrigerator. And then it would tell you what recipes you could make in under 20 minutes with the existing ingredients in the fridge, or help you create your shopping list.
Wow.
Until I showed her something that because she's very passionate about cooking and very passionate about
Sure.
it. Till I found something that lit her up, it didn't matter to her. Now everything is, well, I'm gonna go check that out I'm gonna go use my GPT for that. And you just need to, in a business sense, you need to understand not everybody is there because they, pretended at the holidays when they were a kid, they wanted to be a director of marketing or they wanted to be a CRO. Like very few people when you were kids were thinking that way. But you've got to find a way to tap into that purpose, the thing that lights them up. The research on purpose-driven employees and organizations is legion, right? Everybody gave it a lot of lip service, but few organizations can figure out how to implement it. You have an opportunity to tap into that to drive this agile, iterative thinking in your employee base that will net result in an organizational acceleration beyond what just simply giving them the tool and saying, have fun will do.
Damn. I feel like I'm talking to AI right now. Are you actually there?
No, I'm here. 100% here. I even trimmed up my beard and my goatee for you.
Right. Damn. Hey, does DeepHumanX, do they offer these like trainings or workshops?
Some of them we do. Yeah. We do everything from like a level set briefing, right? Which is more of an executive level or a quick team level set. We do workshops kind of to focus on that. Here's your foundation, your thinking and AI foundation. And we do bigger engagements where we start with those workshops and then move into helping install a consistent iterative, model for approaching the technology, all while using the tech and getting hands-on, but doing it in a different way. Right. And so we have a series of different things that we can do. Our belief is that due to the speed at which this is advancing, the old consulting agency type models of, hey, we're going to back up a busload of experts and we're going to hang out for a year and do this project or whatever. I don't believe those are going to work anymore. I think the key is to enable an organization to own their future. So now we have to give them the tools, the frameworks, the experience, and the guidance to really quickly lean into that purpose-driven approach with the technology. So it requires an understanding of, L&D and best ways of doing education and things like that. Our goal is to enable the company in a way that if we run a little workshop, a briefing, or a bigger workshop or whatever, that after one or two, they get it and they're off and they own their future. We don't want to stick around. We want to enable you to come. We have partners in our collective. If you want to implement technology or you want to go deeper on advisory and research, we have companies in the collective that we can introduce you to that we share the same values and we know are all in alignment. But our gig is really to enable the company to be able to own their future through helping with a repeatable model for how do I do this and do it at the speed. Because the more people you put in between you and your desired outcomes, the longer it's going to take. And that's an outdated consulting model. And I think some of the big consulting firms are struggling with that because I don't, having had conversations with some of them, they don't know how this is going to change their model or ways that they're going to approach. A couple of them, I think, will be making announcements here in the near future about pivots they're going to make on the way they engage in clients. But it's a guess at this point for them. They don't know. We want to enable the organizations. We want to enable the teams.
Love that, dude. How do people contact you? I'm already talking myself into doing a workshop. So
hit the website, DeepHumanX.com.
Okay.
We've got a LinkedIn group, the DHX Collective. Please feel free to join that. You also can shoot me an email. It's just chad.sanderson@deephumanx.com. Yeah. We're getting ready to do a webinar series. So if you hit our DeepHumanX LinkedIn page, you'll see a webinar series that we're getting ready to launch there as well. But just lean in, reach out, ask a question, become part of the community. We would love to have the conversations and work with you.
Makes total sense, man. The level set is so key because otherwise you're going to have people that already know something tuning out, and you got to get everyone on the same page so that you can build as an org. I love this. Sign me up. I'm going to click through. Dude, thank you so much for coming back on here. So much to think about. I'm excited. I feel that much more in the loop now, back in touch, out with the old, in with the new, agentic until something happens. But shots fired. Understand, need to be agile, need to be flexible and reactive, not just building a castle and hiding behind the walls.
Yeah, AI augmented, human enhanced, purpose driven. That's what we're all about. We believe that's where the future success is.
Yeah, because that's really what you have. Once you have AI just running everything, is what is the purpose. So it makes sense that you have that blended in there. Dude, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you for schooling me up yet again, sir. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it. Look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Hell yeah. And for those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, then share this with someone else. 1 person, 2 people. Hey, does your team need to friggin' get all leveled up to the same amount and get started? Don't just send them to the wild like Shopify. Get them some training. I'm going to be there. I'll see you there. I'll see you guys on the webinar, on Chad's webinars. Go share this episode with 1 other person, 9 people, 3,000, whatever the number is. But with that, dude, Chad, you're the man.
Appreciate you.
All right, everyone. This has been a crazy cool, mind-bending episode of Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.